Freddie Mercury made his mark with a legendary singing voice, a memorable strut, and a larger-than-life stage presence. But as out there as his public persona was, he kept a lot of big things to himself. From his nights on the town with Princess Diana to the real reason he could sing so well, here are the most remarkable things we learned about Freddie Mercury after he died. Much has been made of Freddie Mercury's incredible singing voice, which allowed him to reach the depths of Somebody to Love and the heights of Under Pressure. His vocal range has been rumored to span 4 octaves and remains so impressive that in 2016, it inspired a team of scientists to look into its biological source. Mercury professed a belief that his voice's special quality came from his unusual teeth. That's why he never tried to have his overbite corrected, despite being self-conscious about it. But the 2016 study concluded that it wasn't his teeth behind his vocal range, but rather his vestibular folds. These are a pair of membranes located just above the vocal cords, which are sometimes called false vocal cords, as they're not typically used for making sound. Mercury could use his to create subharmonic vibration, which is how he produced that growl he's famous for. Whether or not his voice was really capable of hitting 4 octaves is something the scientists weren't able to determine. So that aspect of Mercury's talent remains a subject of debate for music fans. Freddie Mercury was able to navigate the line between celebrity and privacy with grace, but for some famous people, being anonymous is almost impossible. Lady Diana Spencer, Princess of Wales, was one of the most notoriously harassed celebrities of her time, and the constant media attention was especially hard on her. According to Rolling Stone, Mercury befriended Diana in the mid-1980s and sympathized with her situation. Along with some friends, he conspired to take her out for a paparazzi-free night on the town. They disguised Di in drag by dressing her in an army jacket, aviator sunglasses, and a leather cap, after which they snuck her into the most raucous gay bar in London. The plot worked flawlessly. The bar patrons were so dazzled by Mercury and his friends that they paid no attention to the princess, who was able to spend the entire evening incognito. Diana was so thrilled with the experience that she told Mercury and his friends that she hoped to do it again. Mercury's bombastic stage reputation didn't follow him into his personal life, or even into his relationship with his bandmates. It's said that Mercury was really the most level-headed of the bunch, especially when it came to disagreements between his fellow band members, which were evidently quite common. Mercury once said the band, quote, argued about everything, even the air that we breathe. Yet somehow the band persisted through it all. According to writer Leslie Ann Jones' biography of Mercury's life, the frontman was usually the guy who ended up keeping the peace, an assessment the bandmates agreed with. As Brian May recalled in 2007, it was normally Roger and I who were at opposite ends. Everyone thinks that Freddie was difficult. Actually, Freddie was great. He was a great diplomat.
We argue a lot, we fight a lot, but then in the end, you know, what really is the key feature is that we must come up with some product.
Freddie Mercury was friends with Michael Jackson for a time, and the two intended to record music together at some point. But as it turns out, Mercury was just too wild and crazy for Jackson's tastes. That's right, the guy who owned a chimpanzee once tried to buy Marvel Comics and had dreams of building himself a giant robot replica thought Freddie Mercury was too wild and crazy to hang out with. According to Mercury himself, quoted in Leslie Ann Jones' biography, the two musicians made efforts to record several songs together, but could never really find the time to finish the tracks. The 3 songs they worked on together, Victory, State of Shock, and There's More to Life Than This, ended up being completed without each other's involvement on their own albums. Ultimately, the two stars had a falling out, supposedly after Jackson took offense to Mercury doing too much cocaine in his living room.
I think one of the tracks would have been on the Thriller album if I'd finished it. But I missed out.
In the 1980s, it wasn't uncommon for people who suspected they might have been exposed to HIV to just not want to know for sure if they had the virus. At the time, HIV was a death sentence. Now, people are encouraged to get tested for the disease and do what they can to avoid passing it to others. But in Mercury's time, much about the virus's nature was unknown. Tests for its presence weren't considered to be accurate, and the outlook for infected people was bleak. It's understandable why someone wouldn't want to face the possibility that they'd contracted it. According to journalist Tim Tiemann, Mercury didn't know he was HIV positive until he began showing advanced symptoms of AIDS. While he might have suspected he carried the disease at some point, he wasn't diagnosed until 1987, after a type of cancer called Kaposi's sarcoma appeared on his shoulder. Longtime partner Jim Hutton said that up until that point, there'd been no real indication that Mercury was ill. Even after his diagnosis, Mercury was never open about his illness, not even to his family. He kept his condition secret from the public until confirming the rumors in a press release the day before he died. Sexuality is a lot more complex than just straight or gay. But in Mercury's day, people would sometimes assume that you had to be either one or the other. When the public learned of Mercury's AIDS diagnosis, the disease was widely, and wrongly, associated only with gay people. It was then widely assumed that Mercury himself must have been gay too. But Mercury wasn't gay in the strictest sense of the word. He continued to profess his love for ex-fiancé Mary Austin even years after their physical relationship ended. It has also been asserted, in biographies published after Mercury's death, that the greatest love affairs of his life were with women. So it seems the singer was emotionally drawn to women, but physically drawn to men. It's a state of affairs that seems to have caused some upset toward the end of his life. Even though he spent his last 7 years in a relationship with Jim Hutton, he still thought of Mary Austin as his soulmate, and therefore the natural heir to his fortune.
She's been a girlfriend of mine for a long time, and even though we're not together right now, I sort of refer to her a lot.
Freddie Mercury knew he was dying, but he refused to feel sorry for himself. He wanted to remain productive, preferably while free from unwanted media attention, so he chose to keep his diagnosis a secret. As bandmate Roger Taylor told Entertainment Weekly in 1999, he didn't want to be looked at as an object of pity and curiosity, and he didn't want circling vultures over his head. Mercury kept recording throughout most of his final years, even when it became very difficult for him. According to GQ, Queen released the single The Show Must Go On just 6 weeks before Mercury's death, and the singer was so ill during recording that bandmate Brian May expressed concern about whether he'd be able to perform the vocals at all. Mercury put those doubts to rest, though. As May later described the events, "I said, 'Fred, I don't know if this is going to be possible to sing.' And he went, 'I'll f***ing do it, darling.' Vodka down, and went in and killed it. Completely lacerated that vocal." He couldn't keep it up forever, though. While recording Mother Love, he stopped before the last verse and then said, quote, "I'm not feeling that great. I think I should call it a day now. I'll finish it when I come back, next time." But there was no next time. Mercury never went back to the studio, and May sang the last verse of Mother Love himself. The HIV virus doesn't kill directly. It attacks the immune system, which makes it possible for secondary infections to move in. That's what makes AIDS such an insidious illness. It's not a single disease, but rather a lot of diseases. And the symptoms patients end up showing are all specific to the viruses, bacteria, fungal organisms, and other microbes that the individual patient is exposed to. Kaposi's sarcoma, which was Freddie Mercury's first symptom, is a cancer caused by the human herpes virus 8, which wouldn't cause symptoms in a person who has a healthy immune system. As the symptoms of AIDS progressed throughout his body, Mercury developed other horrifying complications. In 2017, guitarist Brian May told the Sunday Times magazine that one of Mercury's ugliest symptoms was in his foot. As May told the publication, "Tragically, there was very little left of it. Once he showed it to us at dinner, and he said, 'Oh, Brian, I'm sorry I've upset you by showing you that.'" Ultimately, the singer was killed by pneumonia brought on by complications from AIDS, a relatively common end for an exceptionally uncommon person. Freddie Mercury's body was cremated, but there was no public ceremony for the spreading of his ashes, or even an announcement of where the singer wanted his remains to go. Only one person knew what he wanted done with him, and it's unlikely she'll ever reveal the secret. According to Rolling Stone, former fiancé and longtime friend Mary Austin is the only person who knows where Mercury's ashes went. As she told the magazine, "He suddenly announced one day after Sunday lunch, 'I know exactly where I want you to put me, but no one's to know because I don't want anyone to dig me up. I just want to rest in peace.'" So Austin kept Mercury's ashes for 2 years, until long after her comings and goings stopped attracting press attention. Then she told everyone she was going out for a facial and buried his remains in secret. Because fans will be fans, there remains plenty of speculation about where exactly Mercury's remains might be. Some think Austin took him all the way to Zanzibar, though "I'm going for a facial" would be a weird way to try to cover that up. Others think he's under a tree in his own backyard. All that guessing is unlikely to amount to much, though, because the only person who knows for sure where Mercury's remains went will probably take the secret to her grave. Because Mercury was one of the first celebrity AIDS victims, people are often surprised to hear that he was once engaged to a woman and that she remained very close to him even after he started having relationships exclusively with men. While the Bohemian Rhapsody movie glossed over a lot of things, this aspect was pretty accurate. Even though they never married, Mercury often referred to Mary Austin as his wife, and in a 1985 interview he once said, "All my lovers ask me why they couldn't replace Mary, but it's simply impossible. I couldn't fall in love with a man the same way I did with Mary." Mercury was involved with Jim Hutton for the 7 years prior to his death, but he left the former hairdresser with a pittance compared to what he reportedly left to Mary Austin. She received the bulk of his estate, including his money, his mansion, and his recording royalties. And Austin wasn't exactly kind to Hutton after Mercury's death either. In fact, she kicked him out of the house shortly after the singer's passing. Hutton ended up taking the £500,000 Mercury left him and used it to build a home in his native Ireland, where he remained until his death in 2010.